We feel like we're punching above our weight, given that Danny Cohen's in the other room. So thank you for turning up. I'm going to introduce the panel of guests in a moment, but first we're going to have a few words from the sponsor of the session, Agnieszka Moody from Creative Europe.
Thank you very much for introducing me, Peter. Thank you for coming this morning to one of the opening sessions of the festival. So yes, I am Agnieszka Moody and I'm the director of Creative Europe Desk UK, based at the British Film Institute in London. And I work with the UK-wide team of colleagues. Our job is to promote the European Union's funding program called Creative Europe, which has just taken over from the program you might be more familiar with called the Media Program. I hope that some of you at least know it. So the new program is supporting audiovisual industry in Europe with just over 100 million euros every year, and it goes towards a wide range of different projects and supports many different professionals, including independent producers for film and television. One of our dedicated funding schemes supports internationally produced TV programs, including drama, creative documentary and animation. Over the last 7 years, our grant supported such British shows as Hinterland or Jamaica Inn, and then also a whole host of very well-known European fare, such as The Return, The Killing, The Bridge, Wallander. You have a handout actually listing all of them. There's quite a wealth of projects there. The principle is always the same, that they have to be produced for international market, meaning with the involvement of at least 3 broadcasters from 3 different European countries. Why we're here today at the festival is that we're really keen to spread the good news. Usually those grants have been given out as up to 12.5% of the production budget and capped at 500,000 euros. But from this year, we've increased that support because the European Union wants to play its role in boosting the high-end TV drama. So now for substantial high-end TV drama series of a budget of at least 10 million euros, and consisting of at least 6 parts of 45 minutes long, we've got non-repayable grants of up to 1 million euros, and we want you to know about this. So the aim of the scheme is to boost European capacity to compete on global scale. We have programs that creatively have proven themselves that are able to do this. We need to help create the industrial infrastructure in Europe to produce them, and this we can only do by collaborating across borders. So that's how the program would play its role in doing that. How can we seize this opportunity, and how both producers and broadcasters can join forces to achieve that? We have assembled an illustrious panel, some of them coming from far away in Europe, all sharing extensive experience in producing for international market. So I'm extremely proud for having you here, and very much looking forward to hearing what you have to share with us. Over to you, Peter.
Wonderful, thank you. So yes, on my left we have Simon Maxwell, who's the head of international drama at Channel 4, who hasn't travelled very far. Although to his left, Peter Naderman, who runs NADCON, and he has produced series, or has worked on series like The Killing, and is working on a project called The Team at the moment. On his left, Marianne Gray, who runs Yellowbird, a Scandinavian producer that's been involved in projects like Wallander and the Millennium Trilogy. And then we have Alex Marshall, who is the COO of Warp Films, so they do film and TV, and have worked on things like This Is England, and he's got some new projects coming up. And then we have, last but not least, Lars Blomgren, who runs Film Lance, and that's a Shine-owned production company that's been involved with The Bridge and some of the various spin-offs for that. So I'm going to start by saying, since I've been in the television industry, we've been talking about European co-production. It's been talked about for many, many years, but suddenly it seems sexy again, and suddenly it seems that more people are talking about it and doing it. So I just wondered if we can sort of get a quick sort of flavour as to why you guys think that's the case. Maybe I'll start with you, Simon. Why are we starting to talk about this all of a sudden?
I just think there's an amazing opportunity generally to team up and produce shows, commission shows which are greater than the sum of their parts because of the collaborations that are going on. I think there's perhaps an unprecedented spirit of international collaboration between producers and broadcasters that's really, really exciting at the moment. The idea of Channel 4 launching this international drama remit is very much to kind of build on an already internationally renowned drama brand that's commissioned shows as diverse as Shameless and Utopia. But to apply that, to that some of the scale and the international appeal of some of the acquisitions on the channel, so shows like Fargo and Homeland, for example. I guess the question could be asked, why aren't we making a show like Homeland out of the UK or out of Europe? And we've certainly got the talent to do that in Europe. So a large part of the answer is a financial one. So it's all about forging those partnerships to commission shows that can punch their weight with the best out of the US.
That will allow you to do that with their help and
absolutely. I mean, it's obviously, my background is as a producer, and having crossed the fence to be a broadcaster for the first time, I realised just how symbiotic the relationship between producers and broadcasters is. We're absolutely nothing without producers. It has to be a collaboration from the beginning. We need brilliant ideas brought to us. So it's all going to be with the help of these guys for sure.
Do you agree, Peter?
Yes, absolutely. I think, okay, for me it's not new. I have done this for 20 years. So the question is a little bit like some people like to spend their holidays at home and some like to travel and to see something else. And the basic idea of co-production is, of course, to join forces and to learn more about the world and other places. The second thing, because it's now coming more on vogue again, so for me it's like in WAVE I try to cut the circles a little bit, but is that it's very obvious that we need bigger budgets to make shows which can compete on this international globalized market. And as all the channels are cutting down their budgets, so it's very obvious to come to a reasonable budget, you need in a way a cooperation, you need a co-production. And then when you like it, it's not a burden, it's something nice, so it can be good. So that means people who don't like co-production, they're always afraid of losing control. So, but when you can handle this, then you will learn that a co-production can add a lot. And that makes you richer in this exchange with other countries.
Do you agree, Marianne?
Absolutely.
You've been putting together similar like Peter for some years, right?
Yes, but the problem for Scandinavia has been the language barrier. And we've been for years, us as Filmlands, produced with German co-productions. It's basically been in the crime genre. What's happened recently with the boom in Scandinavian drama is that we find that channels in other countries are willing to take risks and go in co-production on what we have, a Norwegian series, which our main co-producer is Arte France in Germany, and that's a huge development for us.
And that's because they're willing, the audience is willing to subtitles and they'll accept shows in other languages.
Yes, and plus it's a bit outside of the normal crime. It's more of a political drama, which fits their channel better. But it's still, I think it's the first time they're doing an international co-production.
Why do you think that is? Why do you think that audiences are more willing to, or more receptive to that now?
Because they're getting used to it. Even in the US, they're watching subtitles, so that's a huge step.
Lars, is that similar to you? Obviously, you've been producing Scandinavian drama for some time, but it seems to have broken through recently.
I think it's a big breakthrough, this acceptance for subtitles. It's very important for all of us. And I'm really surprised, I mean, that the US-Mexican version in the US can work, and the English-French one, the tunnel that we're doing, that works. But I think that one of the big changes now that there's an acceptance for more complicated TV series, we're getting away. We're more like the American cable things, which is really good for us because that's where the Scandinavians always been. So there's I think this change of consumer pattern with the binge watching and everything. That's changed the game, and it's in our favor. So it's good for us.
And Alex, from a British point of view, you're starting to work on an international level, and tell us why you decided to do that.
I think for us it was as much about naivety as anything else. We're fairly new into television and we didn't know what you were supposed to do, so we kind of looked into. It was actually as film producers, we'd spent a lot of time hanging around in film festivals, moaning about the fact that we weren't making many films, but meeting all this amazing talent. So we were already looking to kind of work with that talent across Europe, particularly, and the opportunities just came along. And we've already fostered the relationships with our current partner, OA in Paris. We knew them, literally from sitting around having dinners, and they distributed some of our films, and we'd known them for years and years, so it felt very natural. And having done a lot of film co-productions in the past which weren't natural co-productions, I was very aware of the fact that it has to be a good fit, because it's a long and tricky journey. So.
And then the project you're working on is an English and French, with, I think you said 3 partners, or 3.
Well, it's an Anglo-French co-production, but not an official co-production. It's Anglo-French co-production, but we're also shooting in Serbia with a Serbian service producer. We're shooting in Montenegro. So it's fairly across Europe, and it's all in local language as well. So there's at least 4 languages going on. And
you're working with Sky on this. This is called the Barbarians.
Barbarians, right? Yes.
And do you think and I'll ask Simon this in a moment as well, but from the British broadcaster point of view, in terms of how receptive have you found them to, you've obviously gone to them with the idea, and so we're shooting in Serbia, we've got a French partner, our audience is going to watch this.
Everyone's been really receptive to it. We've had, we were a bit surprised, and with the whole language thing, we thought we'd have more of a battle, but it's been, everyone's been very receptive to it. I think we were very clear about what the series was going to be and what we wanted to achieve with the series from day one. So, and Sky Atlantic and Canal Plus bought into that straight away. So it's been good.
And Simon, similarly, you've been doing this role for a few months now, and tell us a little bit about Channel 4, why Channel 4's decided to move. And obviously Channel 4's known for producing drama, but not necessarily on this scale, and not certainly in this way. Why have they done this?
It's about increasing the opportunity for us as a broadcaster, for producers as well, and for our audiences. So for producers, we're now spending a lot more money on original drama. So my budget stands in addition to the budget for the domestic drama slate. So it's very much complementary to. And I think for our audiences, we get to broaden our offering. We have a completely different creative brief. Again, it's a complementary creative brief to the domestic slate, but it is different. So my focus is on what we're calling contemporary authored genre pieces. So genre is not something that Channel 4 have really gone into in a big way before. Most drama on Channel 4 tends to be very authored drama, but genre, I suppose, gives us a link to co-production. Genres have evolved as a common language. They're universal and archetypal, and therefore we can, they give us that bridge that we need with other partners. So we're basically just expanding what we do, and allowing ourselves to get into a different type of drama on a different scale, therefore serve our audiences in a broader way than we were before.
Has this been possible because of shows like The Returned, which was the first subtitle drama on Channel 4 in 20 years, and The Killing, and the success of that, and the Bridge in the UK?
In terms of the appetite for subtitle drama?
The appetite for international drama?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think obviously the BBC and Sue Deeks really kind of blazed the trail in terms of bringing subtitle drama onto British TV screens. In terms of our own offering, The Return has been an amazing success story for us. So I do think the world is becoming an increasingly kind of small place in some ways in terms of the amount that people are kind of collaborating together, and the amount of appetite we've got for stories that might have been told overseas. I definitely think that it helps. It's breaking down the walls that might have been there.
The next iteration, for instance, of The Return might be a show that you're working on with the French.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say that we always need a really, really strong a touch point as possible for a Channel 4 audience. So I think if a show feels like it would be an acquisition on our channel, it's less likely that I'd get involved in it as a co-production. We're really about I mean, I guess I ask 3 questions when I'm commissioning a show, which would be, or commissioning a show for development. The first is it a brilliant idea? The second is it right for a Channel 4 audience? And the third is, could it attract an international partner? And the second of those questions is obviously really, really important, that it feels like it needs to have a really strong sense of kind of, I suppose there's an editorial connection with our audiences that would be perhaps a bit more than, or a bit more British than Fargo or Homeland or The Return, say, which all feel very particular to their own territories.
But working with British indies as well as European and international producers.
Yeah, I mean, that's another way that we're kind of expanding the opportunity within Channel 4. We're both in the same way as we're increasing the overall budgets that are being spent on original drama out of the channel. We're also opening our doors to the business of international producers in a really big way, and international talent in a really big way. So obviously we're going to be working a lot with homegrown talent to bring their stories to the world, but we're also bringing the world to Channel 4, I suppose.
Peter, have you pitched Simon on anything? What do you make of the British broadcasters suddenly doing this again?
Okay, you know the market, and of course I have done so much in Scandinavia because Scandinavia had been long a very open market. The Scandinavians are used to co-produce. So these countries, the film costs the same in Sweden like in Germany. So, but you have in Sweden 10 million people, in Germany 80. So that means it's obvious that you have to find partners. And that this matches with the same world makes it very easy for us to cooperate. The other thing is, of course, let's say you see the genres. So I have done so much crime in my life, Millennium, The Killing, The Bridge, because crime is...
Hold on, you're admitting criminal behavior.
Yeah. So that's because this market wants crime, because crime is traveling internationally the best. Now I'm coming back to your question. So no, England, I love England. I see a lot of creativity. I've worked here, but I know, of course, to approach an English channel is difficult. So it's much more difficult than to approach maybe a German channel or even a French channel. Because these big markets, like Germany, especially England, France, they are, of course, in a way, very self-confident in their own programming. So they see their audience and they see what they want, and they're a bit afraid to take stuff from outside. But I think there is something crucial that changes too. In this development of TV we have, it's more and more important that the channels see their chance of their normative power. So Sue Deeks brought The Killing to England. Great, brave, and it works. You could have said, why should our people see a Danish crime show? So they don't understand a word. It's a totally different... So I think the important thing is that the channels understand, and that's their last chance in this battle which is coming now with all the other distributors, is to see their editorial quality. Why should I watch a program? I can watch it. I can get the programs myself now, so that's no problem. When I want to see True Detectives, I take it. But the quality of a channel is that you have an editorial quality, so that means BBC brought The Killing to Germany, to England. I brought The Killing to Germany. So that is a quality what you want to have with a channel. So I think it will be important that the channels understand that beside all their domestic stuff, what they will do anyway, that they see the qualities outside, and I think the audience will appreciate this.
Do you get the impression that those doors are opening or starting to open for you pitching original ideas?
Simon's new position is, of course, a sign for this, definitely. So that means when you open a department and you take care of this, so I think, and there is a lot to give and to take.
What about the other broadcasters? Is it just Channel 4 or the others that you could approach?
Channel 4 is traditionally, I work with them since 20 years in a way. There is a long tradition of being a bit more open. The BBC is traditionally a bit more difficult because they have a very fixed pattern of what they want, and we've worked with Sky, very nice actually, and ITV is there too. So there are possibilities, but it's maybe Channel 4 is in a way the one who has the eye is most on Europe.
Yeah. Marianne, now if you were doing Wallander again rather than the way that the BBC did it now, back then, do you think the way you could pitch that as an original production into the UK?
Oh, that's a difficult question, because I think the challenge for us, I mean, that sort of was part of starting this whole thing, actually. And I think that the Swedish Wallander was getting an incredible boost in the UK by the UK Wallander, which is an interesting situation in itself. But I think for us the challenge is to think beyond the crime and come up with ideas that would appeal to international audiences. That is great ideas beyond the crime stuff, and it's not that easy. But I think that's the key.
You think it needs to go beyond that genre?
Yeah, I think that. Otherwise, I mean, unless you're doing what they did with the bridge and finding this perfect formatable drama that you could take to I mean, that's the dream.
How many more bridges are there left?
Everybody wants to
You've
find
done the tunnel.
bridge.
You've done the bridge in the original. You've done the bridge in the States. You must be. There must be a few more bridges available to cross.
A lot, I tell you.
But it's a difficult game because you don't want to ruin the market for the existing ones. But there are opportunities, and I think that as soon as they've played out, we will do more versions.
Did you know when you were originally creating that show in Scandinavia that it could be transported as a format to the UK and France, for instance, or was that happened afterwards?
I think yes and no. I mean, the reason why we did the show from the start was to get into the Danish market because they didn't buy anything Swedish, and that's but like 2 or 3 weeks into production, we put like a promo together. And with the music, with this, and when we saw that, we realized this was there wasn't any dialogue at all. And when we saw that, that's when we all realized that this is going to be much bigger than we expected from the start. And we were going heavily over budget, and we all said, just keep going. Yeah. so that was a nice memory.
But the tunnel seemed, talking rather than the sort of Euro mush, the sort of Euro pudding of the past, it seemed that there was a genuine creative reason for doing a co-production between, in that instance, between the UK and France, and in your instance, Sweden and Denmark, rather than just trying to find bits of money. Is that?
Yes, it was. I mean, I think the reason why the bridge is a success is because it's relevant on 2 markets, in 2 countries. And for us, we're interested in the Danes, and there's cultural differences, and it's something that we can play with. And I think that when Ben Richards and the Kudos people started developing the tunnel, they made it, they took it to another level in a fantastic way. We decided in our version, we don't even use the language. We just say that we claim that Danes and Swedes understand each other, which we actually don't. but then I mean, even in the first scene in the tunnel, there's a big difference from our version because they use to add this humor into the show, the language problem. So they added a new layer. And
we've got a clip of the tunnel. Should we show that? Seems like a good time to roll that tunnel, VT. That's slightly nicer than the original clip, where you see the body falling in half for this early in the morning. On a practical level, from you guys, both broadcasters and producers, what about the development process? This is obviously going to have to change given this model. It's not necessarily the same. How do you go about, and maybe we start, Alex, do you think this will change the practical development process?
I mean, the experience on Barbarian it feels very much like the same process we were going through with more domestic series. We've got one writer who's working with a journalist who originated the story. So it doesn't feel that much different at the moment, whether it would...
When do you pitch? Do you pitch together? Do you pitch one broadcaster and then the other? How does, in terms of going to more than one broadcaster?
We pitch individually. So, but again, that kind of comes out of the relationship we have with OA Core. To us, it feels like we're all one company. It doesn't feel like we're 2 companies working together. There's a really easy way of working. There's a good sort of pattern. So,
did you pitch with them?
We have pitched with them. Well, Peter Carlton, who's the main producer from Warp on it, he has pitched with them, but he's an absolutely fluent French speaker, like a proper fluent French speaker. I can do, beer and that's about it. So, but he can go in. He can actually pitch probably almost as well as the guy from OA Core. So, which is a big advantage. So, yeah.
Lars, similar question. Do you think the development process? How do you see that going forward when you're pitching different broadcasters in different territories?
I don't know. I mean, we we've been learning a lot from doing what we do, but I think it's a different situation now. Like Peter said, there's not as much. A single broadcaster can't carry a production anymore, so you need more partners from the start, and that's the change of the game. And I think we're just trying to learn from the upsides on the creative side, and there are clear upsides, and there's a relevance. As you said, traveling and meeting new cultures and clashing cultures. There's so many interesting things in doing co-production. So we're still looking for the same good old stories, but we don't mind them traveling.
Yeah. And Simon, given that you've started this and you've got a couple of projects that you're working on, when do you want to be pitched, and when do you want to be the one to go and take to other broadcasters? Do you want the producers to do that?
Normally we would expect the producer to lead that process, for sure, but I mean my background is as a producer and with a very international focus, so I've got the connections with all of the international broadcasters. So if I'm working with a producer who may not have those connections, then I can really help out. But it's definitely, in the best case scenario, it's going to be led by the producer.
Are the producers pitching you in the same way as they're pitching peers, for instance, at the same time, or is it a different process when it comes to pitching on the international side?
No, it's completely the same process. I effectively act, I'm the head of international drama, but I act as a commissioning editor. So I will sit down with producers and writers, talk about stories, they'll pitch to me. Mm-hmm. If I love a concept and want to take it further, I'll commission the development. I've got my own development pot. And in a case-by-case basis, it does vary, but I will either take a project to the stage where it's a very polished kind of script and Bible, and then the producers and myself will go out and seek international partners. Mm-hmm. Or in some cases, this tends to be the minority of cases, we will look to co-commission development with another broadcaster. That tends to happen if there's a very specific broadcast partner we've got in mind. If, for example, it's a kind of natural Anglo-French story, mm-hmm. and Canal Plus feel like the perfect partner, or it's a natural English-Swedish story and SVT feel like the perfect partner, then we will definitely look to partner up earlier on.
Yeah. Can I just comment on
Please.
that? I think one of the big changes now is that the main broadcaster has become the most important salesperson for the project, because there's so many projects around and all the broadcasters meet everywhere and they all talk, so what are you up to? I'm up to this and that. So you really need the most loyal, the main broadcaster needs to be really loyal and say, this is something that we're doing and it's happening, because that's the way the other ones will follow. If there's like, we don't know what Lars and his guys are doing, but we're waiting and see what happens. And then the project just falls. So I think you are all becoming more and more important in the sales process.
Yeah. The one thing I would say just quickly is, as a kind of rule of thumb, a bit of advice to producers sitting out there, I would make sure that the creative integrity of the show is as watertight as possible before seeking the second broadcast partner. Mm. If you've got something which is still kind of nascent, still being worked out creatively, and you bring on a second broadcast partner, the fact is every single broadcaster in a co-production situation expects to have a very strong editorial voice. You've got two strong editorial voices, and you've got the producers and the writer, and it's not really watertight yet. It's not necessarily going to withstand that process, as well as something that's got a really clear vision. So if you need to work with the broadcaster to get to the point where it's really strong, then great, develop it in-house and then seek that other partner. But I would say, I'd advise against trying to kind of bring on two partners on something that is not fully worked out.
Yeah.
With Barbarians, with Sky and Canal Plus, it's been a kind of equal partnership since day one. They came onto it more or less together.
Who came on first?
Well, OA Core had the project. It was originated by OA Core, so it had already been pitched into Canal Plus, but they came together to develop from very early on. And we were worried about the editorial, whether there be synergy in the editorial side. Absolutely has been. It's been amazingly so and surprisingly so, and a really good dialogue between Anne and her counterparts in Canal Plus, over quite a long time. On the business side, nightmare. We didn't expect that to be the cultural clash, but that's where the big cultural clash has been. That's where it's been tricky.
On the business and contract side?
Yeah.
And of course you need broadcasters which are experienced, so you have to know which door to watch. So that means my last show, The Team, was produced with 8 countries. So I had 8 broadcasters who were all feeling like commissioning broadcasters. And I had to give them all the feeling that they are, let's say, get what they want. And so this could be a nightmare, but when you have...
Could be or was.
But it was not, because that's the important position of the producer, because when you can give as a producer the people the feeling that they can trust you, and that you handle it, and that this is maybe not the door to watch. But that is the thing when you enter in this process, you have to know that you have to know what is the thing I will get, and can I trust these people? How does this work? You need this experience. So when you see, okay, there are good writers involved, there's an interesting director, so there is a great cast, and this is a good producer, okay, then you can stay a little bit calm and see what are they doing. So most probably it will work. When you are getting nervous and say, okay, but is our actor there? Can I see the script? But we think the Swedish are not really represented in this show. Or our Austrian actor is only in 2 episodes. Yeah? So then you get crazy. So and to
what
buffer
countries
this,
were the 8? Where were they from?
Okay, that was originally that was Sweden and Denmark. So very nice. They have a great experience. These editors are great. So they have a great experience to understand the process. And I know them for years. So we work a lot together. Then you have the German side, Germany, Switzerland, Austria. That's not so easy. So that means they all have, that's the German-speaking territories. Then you have the French side, Arte. Okay, they are more experienced because they are used to do more co-productions. And then you have a Belgian and Dutch side. So, and this, I put it a bit in groups, so they are a bit connecting together. So it's the same with the broadcasting. So that means when the German have broadcasted this, the program is dead for the Swiss and Austrian, because everybody in Austria and Switzerland watch German television. So it means you have to handle this from the beginning up to the very end.
Did they ever meet each other?
Yes, you have to bring them together and to give them the feeling so that they understand. But the good thing is when you do it wrong, then it's a nightmare. But when it's good, then it gives you as a producer, of course, more freedom.
What language does the contract in?
That's a good thing for you in England. So that means everything will be in English. So how should we do it? Yeah, so that's a great advantage for you. So it's nobody wants to see a German contract or a French contract. And when the Greece started in, so nobody wants to see a Greek version of this. So it will be all in English. And we have produced a show, and that is a new thing in European English. So
European
that is,
English?
Yeah, to do it original, because we can never produce in English, in real English, because the English want to know this is Glasgow upper class and London boarding school. Yeah? So that means they feel this. We cannot bring a Swedish actor in speaking English good. So we did this original. So how should a Danish policeman talk with his German colleague? They speak English, of course. And when the French joined, so they speak English as well. Also the French might like that they talk French, but nobody speaks so good French. So that means, but then that works actually, I think, very good. So
is the team largely in English?
The team is largely in English. Yeah. So in Europe, in this English, I'm speaking. So it's you feel the accents, Swedish.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Speaking English better than some of us.
Okay. So you hear this accent. And then, of course, you have these very fine lines, and that it makes it rich, because when 2 Germans are together, they speak, of course, German. So it's totally original. And then it adds something, because 2 Germans speak in German different, so the whole attitude is different. And the finest process, and that was in the original bridge what we did, that is Danish-Swedish. So that is a difference which is nearly not feelable from outside. So that's really, from outside, very often the same country. But there is a big difference, of course. So when we have a love story where there is a Danish police officer with his Swedish wife, you feel this when they talk. There is a difference. So she is Swedish and he is Danish. And with the language, so she speaks nearly perfect Danish with him, but it's even that sophisticated, yeah? But you can feel the difference between a Swedish girl and a Danish man. Also from outside, it feels, okay, now they are speaking all Danish. And this addition of intensity in this dialogue adds, I think, a lot to the show. And it's nice for the people, because the people like to to go ahead. So that is something what we always underestimate, I think. The audience wants to be challenged. They watch a Danish show, also they don't understand the word. And I think they love when they have something where they learn something, oh cool, this is German. So they talk totally different than the English. So it's another style. So it's not meaning the language, I mean the atmosphere in the dialogue.
Given that there's so much English, shouldn't there be a UK broadcast partner on board?
I tried it, of course. I tried it and I had very positive talks with channels. They loved the script, so they're great writers. But in the very end, so they thought, maybe it's better to wait and then we can buy it for BBC4. Okay. So that's, in a way, let's say it's a more practical, saving money attitude. I would have loved to have a British partner, and I was prepared because, you know, when I created this show, I started first, it was very much in Spain and France. Then there was a Spanish crisis, so the Spain couldn't join as they wanted, so I have to move the show a little bit more to Austria and Belgium, because there were interesting models to finance it. And so I would have loved to have an English main cast on board. That would have been great for us. So
that would have meant 9 partners, though.
Yeah, I think the British, knowing me, they could be calm, but maybe so that means they would be afraid of this mix.
Yeah.
Marianne, what's your experience? Obviously, because your new project, Occupied, might not have 8 partners, but as partners that you might not necessarily expect, the French and some Scandinavian partners, right?
Well, we had some contract issues because their contracts are in French and we can't sign a French contract, so we ended up having both. But it does take some time to get through. But it's been great. I mean, they've been very supportive of us, and they're involved in the script process and everything. But obviously, as you move along, they've put a good trust in us.
What about the language?
Well, it's mostly, and that's the fantastic thing, it's mostly Norwegian, and there's some English and a little bit of Russian.
And you're working with Zodiac Rights on it, is that,
yes.
Is that right? So that sort of brings us in, and I think actually maybe this is a good time to say we've got some clips from Occupied. I think you're going to tell us a little bit about what they are before we show them.
Well, they're straight from the cutting room. We don't have episodes yet, so they haven't been worked on it. It's just straight out of, so it's just to get a little bit of flavor. And we had to put some text in the beginning because there's quite a lot of explanation to understand the situation, so which we're going to do differently, obviously, in the show. But for this purpose, okay. It's just sort of.
Should we roll the Occupied trailer? Lovely. A Joe Nesbo original idea, right? We didn't mention that. And then sort of going back to my point about distribution, how important is the distributor in the sense of something like Occupied and working with?
Well, it's extremely important, and like you said, the main broadcaster can carry maybe half a production in Scandinavia, so you have to find half, and this is an expensive show for many reasons, and every little piece, the creative Europe is important, the distribution advancement is important, and co-production partners that we also try not to have. We try to have like 2 major broadcasters.
And then you'd let the distributor go and find the rest of the money? Yes.
I mean, it's also, I mean, if sometimes you do pre-sales, but, you know, to pre-sale a Norwegian show is not very easy, so.
Is that the same for you, Alex, on something like Barbarians, or not quite?
Yeah, pretty much. We knew that we had to get the distributor in place fairly early on if we're going to be able to achieve our ambition in terms of scale of the show. So, we had to get them on board as soon as we could.
And also, you've got some money from Creative Europe in terms of European funding. I was going to ask you guys all, how important are the various tax schemes and funding models in terms of putting this together? Is it a big part or just a small part, or where do we start? Lars?
It's extremely important. It's like do or die, actually, to get the money. Yeah.
And what are the ones that you use? Where would you go first?
Well, Creative Europe for one, of course. I mean, it's a bit strange though, and because it's actually even more difficult with the second season, because a lot of the soft money systems, they only work on the first season. So actually, even if you have a hit, it's more difficult to get the second one up and running. But But we have the Nordic Film and TV Fund, that they are extremely important for us. And then there's some, well, Swedish money as well from the Film Institute and so. But it's very important.
So?
Yeah, I mean, from the broadcast perspective on my model, the finance plan tends to look like, obviously, the majority is constituted from 2 major broadcast license fees, ours being one of them, our co-production partner being the other one, which is always going to leave a gap, which has to be filled by both the activities of a very strong distribution partner. To your first point, that's really key for us that we have one of those on board. We might make one kind of chunky pre-sale in there, maybe sort of 15% distribution advance, and then the rest would be soft money, so UK tax credit or any other.
Will you film stuff in the UK to take advantage of something like that?
Definitely. I mean, we would hope to film somewhere where there is a financial advantage to film there. So it doesn't necessarily need to be in the UK, but of course we would love it to be in the UK. It could be anywhere where there's a tax credit, and of course the Creative Europe money is essential, and it's really exciting to see that they've increased their investment from the last 7 years by about 9%, I think, going forward for the next 7. So of course that's going to be a huge benefit to both the TV market in general, but also really specifically to our activities at Channel 4.
Are there any downsides to taking this soft money?
I think you have to weigh up the pros and cons, particularly tax credits. You know, it's a lot of the countries that have been running tax credits for a number of years, the cost of working there have gone up to eat up the benefit of the tax credit. So, for example, Barbarians, we're shooting in Serbia rather than neighbouring Croatia, where there is a tax credit, and there isn't one in Serbia. Well, theoretically there is, but there's no money in the pot. But we chose to shoot there anyway, partly because it made creative sense, but also because when you really analyse the costs, the benefit is marginal in Croatia. So, and for the hoops you have to jump through sometimes to qualify, then it just isn't necessarily worth it. And again, with Barbarians, we chose. We could have probably engineered the show to work for the UK tax credit, but we, very much for creative reasons, we decided not to go down that route, because it would have been, again, just using the tax credit tail wagging the creative dog, which would have been the wrong way round. So there are a lot of pros and cons. The cost of the hidden cost of doing tax credits and those kind of things can be they can be quite significant. With the Creative Europe money, it's just the process is fairly straightforward. There are no kind of bells and whistles to it. There's no sort of major problems, so it's fairly natural to try and get that if you can.
You don't have to sign away your firstborn to get a bit of the money?
No, secondborn only, so yeah.
No, good. And I mean, I guess the thing we haven't talked about is the US, and I wonder, are some of the projects now that are starting to come through some of the European shows, are they starting to compete? Are we, competing with the HBOs of the world and the FXs and the Showtimes? Are we getting to a point now where European drama can be seen in the same way as True Detective or Breaking Bad?
First, of course, you have to see the American industry is always the smartest, the quickest, the most energetic. So that means all our shows are, in a way, now have remake rights sold to America. So the American buys it simply. They go on the market. So if something happens, The Bridge, The Killing, which is interesting, all our talent is working there. So that means long before, let's say, a German market has recognized an interesting director, so the Americans, he has an American agent. And so that means they are all working there, which is, for the talent, nice, and I like it because they got more experience. So, but the American idea, the Americans are there, that is imperialism. So of course they want to have this. And so it's their good right. So that means they are quick, they secure rights, they secure talent. And their idea is, of course, that when they see a great show like The Killing, that they think, okay, we can produce this much better. And we can sell it much better for the world market. So that means we in Europe have to take care, and England is in a very good position actually, so because you have this language advantage, and so we have to take care that we bring our own stuff to America too. So incorporate, and I see when you see a show like True Detectives, that could be a co-production, definitely. So that could be Yeah, okay, they do it alone, so they don't need us. But this sort of high-end drama could bridge in a way, and that has happened. I think cooperations between HBO and BBC are not easy, but quite fruitful, actually.
Marianne, you were going to...
Well, I was just going to say that I think the US is obviously leading in the serialized, long-running procedurals and those kind of shows, but in Europe, like you were talking about earlier, we're used to, and especially in Scandinavia, and I think most of Europe, working with different formats, letting the material sort of determine the format. So now when you're doing like a one case over 6 episodes, like a Broadchurch or whatever, those kind of shows, we're more used to doing that. That, you know, Scandinavia for sure is not strong in the procedurals or per se. So I think that's an advantage that fits very much with the US cable market.
I think it's difficult to, I mean, to meet, to have the two cultures meet, because their way of working is completely different, and they're extremely creative, and it's fantastic to be part of a writer's room, but it's so different. And we write the script, we make an agreement. That's also why we can have the non-writing producers being instead of the showrunners, as we talked about earlier, because first we write, then we make a agreement. We all agree, the broadcasters and everyone involved, and then we have a producer to control, oversee this agreement. They decide on everything. It's like domino bricks falling like this. They shoot and they write. They shoot and they write, and it's such a different process, creative process, and they're brilliant doing it, but we can't, and they don't like our process. So it's a different thing.
That's what I was going to say is that the best of both worlds, and clearly it works, is what the Danes have done, because they have adopted very much the US way of working in the writer's room and the structure and all of that. But what they have that the Americans don't is time. So clearly that's the best of...
They don't need to be as quick in making it, you mean?
No, they can do the writing before you start shooting.
Yeah. The difference is, and that is of course, when you see this, we in Europe, we spend too much time in financing and arranging the whole thing. The Americans, they laugh about this, I think. So, and the great advantage, and you can see this, that's because especially this quality from Denmark's radio is so good, is that they work not in terms of working, they work very Danish, but in terms of financing and producing like an American studio. So that means they have a budget, and they have a plan how this should work, and they have a transmission date. So they don't have to care about running around like Alex, is this fine with here? Can I get media? So yeah, bring all this money together. So that means they have a budget, and they can do it like an American studio. So that means their process is controlled by the creative process. So that means their biggest enemy is in a way the writing process. Can we finish the writing till we start producing? And that is a great advantage. So that means that's why our networking is so important. That's why when I work with Lars, so we know each other, we don't waste time in these things. Of course, we spend in Europe much too much time in arranging and financing and building up these co-productions. So it would be much easier if we could spend more time in the creative process. Yeah.
I think one of the really interesting questions is that in what directions creativity travels. I mean, because if you bring two cultures together, something will work and some won't. And if you did the example with the bridge, you have Denmark, they have a writers-driven culture. The writer is the god. And in Sweden, we have the Ingmar Bergman auteur tradition. So if you have a Swedish writer put together with a Danish director, this is the first time they ever have anyone listening to them. You know, so there's a lot of added values, and there's opposite things. I mean, if you would do the opposite, you would have a problem. So you have to have the local knowledge. You have to know, as I said, what travels where.
Is there a point we're going to get to where, rather than AMC buying the rights to The Killing, or I guess The Bridge might be a slightly different example, but rather than you selling the rights to the team to a US broadcaster, do you think there might be a point where HBO or one of those cable networks comes on board a project like that as a co-production partner?
Okay, they are strictly quality driven, and we have to achieve the qualities, and the level is very high. So But for the team, I have produced it the first time a little bit like an American studio. So that means I took the talent, which was best. So that means the whole talent is Danish, because that was the best people I had at this time. So that means it's more or less Danish director, Danish set designer, Danish DOP. The writers were Danish too. And we worked very European, and we had a very international cast. So there is Verle Bartens, which was nominated for the Oscars with Inner Circle Breakdown, European Film Prize. We have German stars, we have Danish stars. So I tried in this way to go really for the quality. And the good thing was it worked perfect. So the most complicated thing is the financing.
Yeah.
So the cooperation, the creative work, that is very fruitful. I have really, so that means you could think, can the Danish work with Belgian technicians and the German actors, it worked brilliantly.
You were nodding, saying that you think that might be the case.
Yeah,
one
I
day.
mean, from my experience, I've obviously, it's relatively early days, so I've been in the job for a few months. I've been out to both New York and LA to meet all of the guys, particularly at the US cable networks. There's a very, very strong appetite with many of them, if not all of them, to be exploring stuff with Channel 4. I think that...
Rather than remaking it, becoming on board it.
Absolutely, as co-production partners, yeah. And it's just, they all say the same thing. It's about finding, the right partner for the right project, which is exactly right. You don't want to be partnering on something that you don't share the same creative vision for, or you're not editorially akin to your co-production partner, but is there a respect for great European TV out of the US? 100%, there definitely is. And I think that there's a desire to get involved in the right project. And we've seen that in some cases already.
I was going to say, we've had the UK, US, that's, HBO and BBC and, Sky and HBO and FX. That's sort of happened already. I'm curious as to whether you think from a European level, Marianne or Lars, you think that, Occupied could work, with a US partner, a European project, not necessarily a UK project with European partners?
I think there's I don't know if this is really the question, but I can see that if a good idea comes up, I mean, it's good everywhere. And I mean, I talk a lot to publishers right now, and they're completely terrified. And oddly enough, they're all blaming Netflix because we're looking at TV series the way they're reading books. So I think there's a big creative discussion. If you have a really good pitch, so where should I take this pitch? And there's a new openness. If I would go to pitch this in the US, this might end up being a US series, but then it will be done within their system, with their rules, and I will lose my control. So. But I think
you can't keep any of that control.
There are not that many. There's so few really brilliant ideas, and once you have one, it could have been done just anywhere.
So at the moment, we can only compare with the ideas. So that means when you see this level, so that means a German show an hour series is maybe 750,000 euro. The Danish way of doing is maybe 1 million, and the Americans have more than 3. So you are competitive in a market where they can get world stars on board. So that is a huge difference. So that means that the Scandinavian side has been so successful is really the quality of the invention, the quality of the work, the actors they have. And it's in the middle price field. So you cannot make everything by money, but of course it's necessary. There's a big difference.
Marianne, you were going to say something?
I was just going to say, I think we're quite a ways from having a US cable company be partnering up on a Norwegian series. But I think unless there's components in it that they see something beyond the original series.
Yeah, no, fair enough. We're going to finish shortly. I wonder if there's any questions in the audience, and put your hand up and have a think if there are. Mark,
it's if you did get into bed with the Americans, good luck. But the interesting thing is, in Europe, you tend to specifically Channel 4, make 4 or 6 hours. The States won't want to do that. They'll want to do 10s, 13s, 16s, 24s. Yeah. Is that something that you can entertain on Channel 4?
If we had started this model and we weren't open to doing up to 13 episodes, I think we would have obviously made a rod for our own backs. We have to be able to operate on a level which is compatible with our co-production partner. So we're never going to be doing more than what would be the sort of US cable run, which is kind of 13 episodes. We're not going to do kind of network TV sort of 22-ep orders. But in some cases, we could definitely go up to 13 episodes. I'm looking at what we've got coming through at the moment. Humans, which is our first commission, is 8. I think our next show could well be 10. Can't say anything about that at the moment, but there's definitely a large degree of flexibility, so our series orders will be bigger in order to match our partners.
Question over here.
Yeah, Peter mentioned Denmark's radio, which leads me to the subject of Borgen, which hasn't been mentioned before in this session, which is obviously very well known in Britain. But as I understand it, and Lars may know more, the model there is that this is effectively an in-house production of DR, and they have taken a large proportion of their own drama budget, an extraordinarily large percentage, to carry the cost of that show, and then sold it like, quite an old-fashioned model. So it isn't a co-production, as I understand it, in the sense that you're talking about, but it has been a very successful broadcaster-funded show sold abroad. Am I right on that?
You're totally right. So that has developed. So when we worked on The Killing, that was a real co-production. But then, and I distributed it, so the bridge in a way as well. But then from Borgen up, so Denmark's radio was interested to distribute it as well. So you can see they have it, it's totally in-house. Of course, they have a lot of talent, which is freelance, but that means the whole production is placed in the channel. It's like in former times we did in Germany. It's old-fashioned. The BBC have done it. So that means it's a total in-house production, and that what they distribute now themselves. So they produce it and they sell it. Yeah.
They have a tradition of producing very few shows, and they spend a lot of money on every individual show, and they're extremely expensive.
That's right, but as I understand, the downside of this model is because they take up so much of their own budget making the show, they kind of feel that after 2 or 3 series, that's enough because the audience needs another show.
Exactly. That's what happens.
Which is why I think Borgen is ended. Or maybe it creatively run anyway, but actually they just didn't want to make any more. Is that right?
You have to see, that is the difference in the market. So I always say we have, for example, in Germany, 50 crime shows at the same time at the moment. In Denmark, they have 2. So that means, of course, when you are producing in Denmark's radio, they can do every year maybe 2 series. They have maybe 1 crime series and 1 drama series, so that is the maximum. Mostly it's very often 1. So they have to change. So that means after 3 seasons of Borgen, you have to bring something new, because when your audience is only have 1 series, they don't want to watch 10 years Borgen. So they are interested to have some changes in this model.
Good. Okay, one last question at the back there.
Hi, my name's Julie Craik. I run Tayscreen, which is one of the screen commissions in the UK. We were running a project called North Sea Screen Partners, which was a €6 million EU-funded project. I just wondered if you feel that, let's say, smaller companies that are interested in pursuing EU funding and co-production could use facilitation in some way. I think you were talking about people appreciate broadcasters helping them to sell what they do, but do you think in order to actually get to the point of having the demonstration version or whatever, companies could use some facilitation?
Who are you asking? Was that directed at anyone in particular, or? You mean smaller producers?
Yeah, I mean, from Channel 4's perspective, we're happy to work absolutely with any size of production company. It's all about, is this a really, really great idea? If it's a less experienced producer, we might look at a structure where they can be more supported when the project finally comes to fruition. But at that kind of first phase of the development, there is absolutely no distinction that's made between production companies. It's really about the brilliance of the idea in the first instance and whether it's right for Channel 4. And obviously, we would look at the producer to a degree. Then they need to be an experienced producer of some level, but we are completely open beyond that.
Alex?
I think it's definitely a place for facilitation because, you know, we're talking about a lot of different markets. So if you're relatively new to producing TV, then yeah, obviously any way of getting intelligence about the different markets and the way they operate can be really useful. And the partnerships is very important because you can't go to, you know, we would never go to France and try and make a show, I don't think, just on our own. We'd always look for a partner there. Yeah. So if there's a way to find a partnership, and you know, we've worked with the media desk on a number of occasions, and they're very good at facilitating things.
I was thinking that maybe I could contribute to this because with Creative Europe, it's never only just about giving grants to people. We also train professionals. We make those bridges for newcomers to meet more experienced colleagues at professional training courses that are organized across Europe. And we also now, with this new focus on TV drama, organize market type of events where people can network and meet one another. So there are routes of progression for newcomers. If you could find me afterwards, I don't know who asked the question, I think hello.
So I think that,
we can talk about it more.
and there's a coffee in Danish, terribly pun.
It's a bit culturally specific.
It's a bit culturally specific, given that we don't have any Danes on the panel either. But that's afterwards, and there's some coffee in there. And I think you heard Danny send off there. So if we can try and match this with these guys and say thank you very much to all our panelists.